Alright, chapter 17. Overhead conductors. It says conductors that are not owned and maintained by the electrical utility, cannot be strung over a pool or within 10 feet horizontally from a pool. This applies to applications such as service drops, conductors for pole-mounted lights. So again, when you have a pool, a lot of times they try to get you to change the service so that way the lines do not come over the pool. So they don't have to worry about the requirements. But if they are coming over the top, I've done some where they go in there, they dig them up, they don't redo the service, and they just leave the service conductors the way they are. So it says insulated cable 0 to 750 to ground, supported on cable together with a solidly grounded bar, messenger, or solidly grounded neutral conductor. It says 22.5 feet. All other conductors voltage to ground 0 to 15,000, 25, and then over 15,000 to 50,000, 27. Get back to my table here. See if they got the. Nope, they don't have it on here. One of the good pictures that they have. So that 14.5, this is over the water, this is at the highest point. So the 14.5 feet, you got a diving board. It's got to be 14.5 feet above the diving board. You got a platform, like observation platform, like lifeguard chair, 14.5 feet above that. Okay, so it does lower it because you're above the water. Okay, where the water level's at is 22.5 feet. So refer to this picture, and it shows you everything. So it says above the pool, 22.5 feet. It's got the observation deck, 14.5. It's got the diving board, 14.5. Okay, within 10 feet of that pool. So within 10 feet of that pool, once it gets outside the 10-foot range. So if I have a pool, so if I'm within that pool, 10 feet, within that pool, then if I got any observation, here's my pool water. So if I'm over the pool, over the water, it's 22.5. I'm sorry, yeah, 22.5 feet. If I got an observation deck off the concrete, is 22.5. But if I have the diving board, that's 14.5. And I got a observation chair above that is 14.5 feet. Okay, so above the diving board, 14.5. Above the observation, 14.5. Okay, above the deck, 10 feet around that pool, 22.5 from the deck. Once I get outside, like if my pole is over here, and here's my house, and my service, and my wires are coming across like that. Okay. At this point, 22.5. 22 and a half, 22 and a half, and 22 and a half. Okay, the diving board's over there, and the observation deck is over here. So here's my service. It's coming across. Above the water, 22 and a half feet. Above the deck, 22 and a half feet. Above the deck, 22 and a half feet. This is the conductors that are allowed by the electric. Conductors that are owned by the electric utility can be located over the pool as long as the clearance specifies in section 680.8 are maintained. The required clearance depends on the voltage carried in the lines. So again, 0 to 750, 22 feet above the water or deck level, and 14 and a half feet above platforms. So the diving board, the observation deck, whatever may you have. Okay, so those underneath the wires. Up to 15,000, above 750, up to 15,000. That'd be 25 feet off the water at the deck, and 17 and a half feet above diving boards and decks. 15,000 to 50,000, 27 feet off the water and deck, 18 feet above observation and diving boards. For you conductors, only conductors provided by the utility. No other wires can go over. Okay? It's just pole-mounted lumineers. So you got pole lights somewhere, and you got a wire coming across that goes from pole to pole. They can do the same thing because they're owned by the utility. Not owned by you, but owned by the utility. Bonding. This is a very important. Part. This bonding. It says bond all metal parts within 5 feet of the pool. So everything within the pool area. It says bonding is addressed in section 680.26 of the code. All fixed metal parts within 5 feet inside edge of the pool wall must be bonded together. They include the following. Okay, so if you have a ladder, diving board, a ladder, you have a fence, stairs, light fixtures, pump motors, you're reinforcing the concrete, these all have to be bonded together. Okay, we used to run a number 6 solid. If it wasn't within a conduit, we would take a number 6 solid, we're taking number 6 out there, and we bond everything together. Okay, so we make sure that it was all bonded together. Dismissing may include the following items. Forming shells of an underwater light fixture. So here's the shell of the light fixture, so it's grounded there, there, and there, and there's your separate ground. And we're talking about bonding. We're not talking about grounding, we're talking about bonding. It's just like that ground rod. When we take that bare wire over to the ground rod, we take that bare wire over the cold water pipe. We take that bare wire and we go to the reinforced steel of the foundation. Drains and screens, reinforced bars and concrete, metal pool frame, ladders and handrails, metal deck boxes, transformers and enclosures, diving board frame and supports, pumps and pump motors, metal conduit, metal pool cover components. Okay, these items must be bonded together to a common bonding grid. And it says go to figure 1716. This is 1716, so they all have to be bonded together. The connection to the grid must be made with a copper conductor no smaller than number 8. The common bonding grid may be any of the following: the tied reinforced bars of the concrete, the bolted or welded metal pool wall. A solid copper conductor is no smaller than number 8. A solid copper conductor that's no smaller than number 8 American wire gauge. Okay? Why do we bond this together? It's to keep everything at the same electrical potential. So we want to eliminate all voltage gradients. This is the purpose of all these parts together, is to keep everything at the same electrical potential and eliminate voltage gradients. This is called the equipotential bond. This bond groups items, then attaches to ground. So what it does is, because they're all together, so if I got utilities, let's say the utility is bleeding off 3 volts into the ground. So there's a voltage presence in the ground. If we bond all these together, so guess what? All of these would be at 3 volts. Our concrete would be at 3 volts. So no matter what you touch, you don't have to worry about it, because as you reach over and you touch something, guess what? You're at 3 volts, that's at 3 volts, you're not going to get shot. Now, if this is at 3 volts and I'm at 0, or I'm at 0, I'm at 3 volts and this is 0, and I touch it, now that shock is present. 3 volts is enough, they'll get you. They'll take you to the bottom, you drown. Right, it'll paralyze you. It's not the voltage that gets you, it's a current. So if your resistance is high enough, you can create your resistance is low enough, you can create the current to create the movement of electrons, and that's called electrical shock. Okay, so everything the same electrical potential, eliminate voltage gradients. That's why we all bond everything together. When we did electrician 1, electrician 2, and we talked about swimming pools in residential. These are swimming pools that we're just covering again. And I showed you that there's three or four videos by Mike Holt, and real good videos. And then he does a voltage test, and they're checking. He's going through areas and he's doing to see the voltage potential of certain things. If you want to go back, go to Mike Holt and find that on swimming pools. Real good videos on the testing that he does. Okay, so when we bond, we have to bond everything together. That way everything's at the same potential. Everything's at the same potential. Not zero potential, because there might be voltage in the ground that you're not aware of that bleeds off the line, the grounding off of transformers from the utilities. Grounding. That was bonding. Now this is grounding. It says all electrical closing equipment near a pool must be grounded. Proper grounding of these items ensure that the short circuit will flow through the ground path and trip the overcurrent protection device. The following items must be grounded. Okay, now we're talking about grounding. Okay, what gets grounded? Underwater luminaires, all electrical equipment within 5 feet of a pool. All recirculating system equipment. Junction boxes, transformer enclosures. Panels that supply electrical equipment for pools that are not part of the service equipment. So if you have services over there, and I got a panel over here that feeds all the pool equipment. Okay, it's all got to be grounded. It's all got to be grounded. Ground all enclosures and equipment. Ensure short circuits flow to the ground path. So there is a short circuit. If you want to go back, you want to go back to the panel and turn the panel breaker off. So it creates the low resistance, and it creates high currents, and it trips the breaker. The size of the equipment ground conductor is determined from table 250-122 of the code. Equipment ground conductor for pool-related equipment and devices is normally no smaller than 12 American wire gauge. This conductor cannot be spliced. The equipment ground conductor must be installed within circuits, conductors, and rigid metal conduit, IMC, rigid non-metallic. Conduits for indoor installations, EMT, can be used. Cord supply components must have an equipment ground conductor as part of the cord assembly. So when you're having anything that's going to be plugged in, it's got to be a 3-wire. Okay, it has to be a 3-wire. You just can't have a 2-wire. I talked about that yesterday. Why? Because it's coming here, and it's going out here. I got 5 amps here. Guess what? I got 5 amps here. Okay, so if you're in the water, radio falls in the water, and it's only a 2-prong, guess what? Whatever's going to be on the hot, it's also going to be on the neutral. The GFI is going to say, hey, current's good. You know, then the breaker, if you got a 15 amp breaker, 20 amp breaker, well, the only way that's going to trip is if you get above it. So maybe if you get above 20 amp for over 3-4 hours, and then maybe it might trip then. But it ain't going to trip right away. And it says, remember, all equipment grounding conductor must be properly identified. The equipment ground conductor must have green insulation or green with yellow stripe. If 8 American wire gauge or smaller. If an equipment ground conductor are 6 or larger, they can be any color and must be marked green at all accessible places, pull boxes and terminations, and and terminations. So always remember is smaller than size 6, you gotta have a green. Larger than size 6, well, you can just use a black wire and put some green tape on it, spray paint or whatever you want. Storable pools. Part 3 of Article 680 addresses storable pools. A storable pool is defined by the code as a pool constructed above ground capable of holding water at a maximum depth of 42 inches. For any size pool with non-metallic molded walls or inflatable walls. A cord-connected pump is often used with storage pump. The pump should be double insulated and have an equipment ground conductor in its cord. The receptacle which is the pump is plugged into, including the equipment ground conductor. So again, when you got these, it's got to have a 3-wire, has to have a ground, and it has to be protected by GFI. Cord and plug connected luminaires can be installed in the walls of storageable pools under the following conditions. The lamp must be operated at 15 volts or less. Let me see if it's on here. Nope. The lens body and transformer must be impact resistance. The assembly must be listed for purpose and cannot have exposed metal parts. The transformer must be identified for its purpose and must be isolated winding types with a ground metal barrier between the primary and the secondary winding. So we talked about transformers, we talked about the isolated transformer. So all this is an isolated transformer that isolates. So the only way you can get your voltage is hot to the neutral, hot to the grounded wire, not to the ground beam. Low voltage, just like low voltage lighting. Okay. Safety note: all electrical equipment used for storable pools must be protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter. Okay, so everything must be protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter. So now we have, oops, I went the other way. Spas, hot tubs. This is hotels, motels, condominiums, exercise facilities, and retreats may feature spas and hot tubs and hydro massage equipment. These units require careful installation. Part 4 of Article 680 of the Code contains the requirements regarding spas and hot tubs. Part 7 covers hydro massage bathtubs, and Part 6 covers pools and tubs for therapeutic use. Circuit supplying power to spas, hot tubs, and therapeutic pools and hydro massage units must be protected by GFI. This protects those using the units from shock. And it goes on, hydro massage tubs. Wiring methods used in hydro massage, it's chapters 1 through 4. Okay, so let's say you got in a hotel. So you have hydro massage in the bathtub, in your hotel room, or the hot tub, or spa, whatever you want to call it. Okay, it's got a pump motor. I've done many of them where we go in there, and in houses, and I've done in the hotels, and they have a pump, and they have a heater. Okay, each one's only 120 volts. 3-prong GFI. So it's a circuit for each one, because the pump was about 7.7 amps, and the heater was closer to 14. So they were on 12 with a 20 amp breaker for each one, separate circuits, and then they run. Then I ran a number 8 solid. Over to ground the motors on. So anytime you have a motor, when you're bonding these things, and going back to bonding, you have to bond all parts to something. You have to ground them. It has a grounding electrode. It has 3 wires going to it. It has 3 wires going to it. It's got the neutral. It's got the ungrounded. It's got the grounded and the grounding. It connects to the plugs into the cord. But we have to ground bond the metal frame. Okay, and if there's any other metal parts, we also have to bond it to the main bonding system. So that way everything's on the same potential. A couple of houses I did, they used plastic pipes, so I had to go all the way back from the service and then get my bond all the way back. As I brought in and I bonded the gas pipe and then I bonded all this together. The old part of the house, one of them, the old part of the house had copper pipes with it, so I had to bond the copper pipes. Why? Because I could get into the rebar. So again, chapters 1 through 4, what do you use? You know, you're doing a commercial building, you're using conduit, using EMT. Pull the ground wire across. Don't rely on the conduit. Pull the grounding electrode conductor across. You know, whether you're using flex, ENT, whatever it may be, non-metallic, whatever it may be, you know, just make sure you bring your B wires along. Outdoor units must comply with the requirements applicable to pools as found in Part 1, Part 2, Part 4, Part 7 of Article 680. Some of these units are supplied by manufacturers as an assembled unit. So the manufacturer gives you an assembled unit. It must be plugged into a GFI, and the cord cannot exceed 15 feet. So with outdoor units, factory supplied equipment, okay, if you have a cord on it, you just plug into a GFI, and your cord cannot be more than 15. Factory supplied panel connected to service or main panel board. It says the assembly includes a factory supplied panel. It cannot be connected. It can be connected to the service or main panel board. Metal bonding should be bonded together. Proper grounding of the system is essential. So if I got a panel that I mount somewhere and I bring power over from the service to that area, guess what? I got to bond it all together too. So I have to bring my grounding, make sure the grounding, everything we're trying to keep it at the same potential. So grounding and bonding is all important. Indoor units connected with flexible cord to a 20 amp. So again, an indoor unit, you know, you can have flex, you can have EMT, you can have rigid, IMC, non-metallic. You know, if you got an area, you can maybe use Romex, depending on your jurisdiction. Houses, you can use Romex. 6 feet, receptacle 6 feet. From area, so you have to have a receptacle of 6 feet. It must be GFI protected. Okay, here they're just showing 5 feet because they're talking about the lights. The receptacle's got to be outside 6 feet, not less than 5 feet. This says these units must be no less than 6 feet from any receptacle in the same room. The receptacles are also within 10 feet of the unit. The receptacle must have a GFI protection. This also applies to wall switches. Okay, so anything's within that 6 feet area, you got to have within that 10 feet. You have to have GFI protection. Luminaires and paddle fans located within 5 feet of perimeter must be 7'6" above the maximum water line. Also, the luminaires must be protected by GFI. So it says 15 or 20 amp required. GFI protected 5 to 10 feet from the spa. We have a luminaire within 5 feet. It has to be 7'6" above the water. It has to be GFI protected. We were putting lights in. They had a hot tub, and they were putting down lights around the hot tub. So, because if you stood in the hot tub, the ceiling was that low, because the hot tub was raised. So you could almost touch the ceiling. So what I did is I bought a GFI switch, and I brought my hot in, and then I made the GFI. I took the hot to the GFI out, the hot to the switch off the GFI. Okay, so now those lights that were above jacuzzi, because they were less than 7'6" from the water line, because I could stand in the jacuzzi and almost touch the ceiling. Okay, so I made them on the GFI. So I used the GFI switch. I came my hot in to the GFI and off my out from the GFI, and then I went to the switch, and then from the switch I went to the thing. So now my lights were GFI protected. Alright, so this is end. I'm going to send this an assignment out. Tomorrow I'll send you the test. Again, by Monday, the test, the PDF, and the review questions. Some of you still have not turned in the review questions for the last chapter. If you haven't turned it in, then you should know who you are. Get those in promptly, please. This covers chapter 17. So don't forget to get the answers in. Alrighty, thank you.